What's going on, guys? Balkan Architect here, and in today's video we're talking about masking regions and filled regions inside of Revit. So you might be thinking, well, why does this require a tutorial of its own? And the reason for that is, well, because these two tools will basically solve 90% of your, but it doesn't look the way it should problems. So I thought, well, it might be a good idea to create a tutorial on this topic and then share that. Now, before we actually jump into Revit, I would like to take this moment to ask you to check out my website, balkanarchitect.com. I'm going to link it up just below this video in the description, and then also up in the cards above. Now, on my website, you can find all of my Revit courses. I have over 130 hours of content, and I'm adding more each month. This is where I can kind of take the extra time to go slowly, step by step, and explain all of the various different topics inside of Revit. I've got courses for beginner, intermediate, as well as advanced level users, so there's something there for everybody. Also, there you can find some of my customized Revit templates, kind of ready to go Revit templates. You can find some really high quality Revit families. Actually, recently we've added some new families, so make sure to check that out. And also there is a very cool plugin which you can also see. Okay, now without any further ado, let's jump straight into Revit, and this is the project that I'm going to be using for this demonstration. So this is just a kind of a simple small house project. This is just one of my courses on my website. I show you how to create all of this documentation and so on. So now let's use this to explain these two tools, the filled region and the masking region. So the first thing that I want to show you is where they are, and that's on the Annotate tab. Here on the detail panel we have the masking region, and the filled region is just behind that, but it's grayed out here, and that means you cannot use it in sheets. So this is kind of annoying. I don't like this, but you cannot use it on sheets, at least not in Revit 2020. Also, you cannot use it in 3D views, but that kind of makes sense. Where you can use it is in plan views. You can also use it in your elevations. So here we go. It works. You can use it in sections. Oops. Let's try that again. Yeah, in sections it's available there, and we can see we have the filled region and the masking region tools there. So you can use them in kind of plan views, you can use them in sections, elevations, but not 3D views and sheets. Okay, now let's go to the floor plan view and let's explore these two tools. So I'm going to start with the filled region, just because we have many more settings for that one. So let's get started. So what this allows you to do is to kind of sketch out a closed loop, and then that's going to be a filled region. Now what you'll see when you start creating this, it's not going to have those, you know, those pink lines that Revit usually has when you're creating a boundary for like floors and roofs and stuff like that. Here it's not going to do that. It's going to show you like black lines. Now the reason for that is because this is now we're doing kind of detailing, and as part of detailing, you will be able to set up the actual line weights and the line styles for each of these lines. So each line can be selected, and then you can go here to line style, and here in the line styles you can see that you can actually pick out the line. So I can say, okay, I want this to be a wide line, I want this to be a medium line. Then if I zoom in, see wide line, medium line, and then this is a thin line. You can also make it a line, which will make it green for some reason, because that's that line style. You can also make it hidden, which will make it dashed. Also, you have this little thing called invisible lines, which will make it, well, currently it's grayed out, but if I hit finish, you will see that here, essentially we don't see that line, so it's, well, it's invisible. And if I move it like, oops, let's move this thing. There we go. So if we move it like this, you can see that it's just going to be an invisible line kind of covering up that part of the building. So those are pretty cool as well. Let's go back to edit boundary. So that's basically how you set up all of these different line styles for the boundary of your filled region. Okay, now let's explore the actual fill of this filled region. So you do that here. So in the properties, just like picking out a wall type, for example, That's how you pick out the type of a filled region. So we have some presets over here. So this is just the default one that comes with your architecture template inside of Revit. So you have your diagonal crosshatch transparent, diagonal down transparent, diagonal up, horizontal, ortho crosshatch, solid, and so on and so forth. So, or you even have wood that looks like wood, I guess. And here we can see these lines, which is annoying, but what you can do is you can select this filled region, and then you can click bring to front, so it's going to bring it in front of that, which is really cool. So anyways, let's move it out of the way a little bit here, away from the house. Okay, now let's explore all of these settings. So I'm just going to go back here, and let's now go with the diagonal down, for example. So if I go here into edit type, what you'll see is that under edit type we have some settings. So the first setting is the foreground fill pattern, and then we also have the background fill pattern, so you can actually have multiple fill patterns. And then here you can assign the fill pattern, and here you can assign the color of that fill pattern. So if I go here to the fill pattern, you click on this little builder button here, it's going to open up the fill patterns, and you can pick out whichever one you like. So here we have the diagonal down, and that's just the type of the hatch. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate this one, and let's call this one the test pattern. Okay, click OK. And now let's leave this at diagonal down, but this one I'm going to leave at the diagonal up. And click OK. And then here I can even change the color. So I can make this red, and then I can click OK. And it's going to combine those two into one. So now I have this weird crosshatch where the diagonal up is red and the diagonal down is black. Now moving forward, let's go back into edit. Now here what you can also do is you can set up the align weights. So by default it's going to be set up to 1, which is the kind of the smallest one. But if I go to 3 and then hit apply, you can see this is getting thicker. If I go to 6, hit apply, so this is getting really thick right now. So yeah, it looks horrible. So you can actually customize those align weights as well. I'm just going to keep it at 1 and hit apply. And then we have masking. So masking basically means do you have this, is it a white background? Is it masking out what's behind it, or is it just overlaying that hatch pattern, or that, the hatch pattern or the filled region? So in this case, as you can see, it's just overlaying it. However, if we go and if we change that to masking, hit apply, okay, now, well, it's actually masking it. So that's another thing to keep in mind that you can do. Now let's talk about the actual types of the patterns. So if I go here to let's go to the foreground pattern, click at it. Here, for these fill patterns, you actually have two types. So you have your drafting patterns, but then also you have your model patterns. Now you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between these two? Well, the drafting pattern is, as the name would imply, for drafting. So you would basically use all of these patterns, the drafting ones, to display, usually it's displaying like a cut material. So for example, the diagonal crosshatch, you would use this to display the cut concrete, reinforced concrete in a section view or in a floor plan view where you're cutting through concrete. If you set up wood, then you're cutting through wood. If you place sand, you're cutting through sand, and so forth. So that's basically what drafting patterns are for. Now, what are model patterns for? Well, model patterns are for patterns which are to be applied not through a cut kind of cross-section, but they're applied to a surface. So for example, imagine if you have a wall in an elevation view, well, you would want to put some bricks or a brick pattern on that wall. And then, for example, if you have a roof, you can put these shakes. If you have wood flooring, you can put wood boards. So that's basically the difference between these two. Now, the difference isn't only in types of patterns, but also how they behave. So the model patterns will always kind of stay the same. So if you change the scale, the number of bricks in a wall, so for example, imagine how many rows of bricks you have in a wall. If you apply this model pattern, it's always going to stay the same. Doesn't really matter which scale you're in, you're always going to have the same number of those bricks, so it's always going to stay the same, the brick pattern. Now the hatch pattern is actually going to change depending on the scale, so the drafting pattern is going to change depending on the scale. So if you have like 1 to 20, you're going to have a lot of cross hatches inside of a wall, for example, but if you're at 1 to 10, at 1 to 100, you might not have as many. So let me just demonstrate how this works. I'm just going to apply let's go with these horizontal, do we have anything else? Yeah, let's go with these horizontal 100 hatches. Hit apply. Okay, so as you can see here, the model hatch pattern are these horizontal black lines, and the red lines, the diagonal up, those are the drafting pattern. So if I change the scale from 1 to 50 to 1 to 20, let's see. Okay, see? So the horizontal lines, there we still have the same amount of these horizontal lines. The red diagonal lines, well, we have more of them because the scale is smaller. If I go to 1 to 100, wait for a moment. Now, as you can see, we have very few of them, the red diagonal ones, but these we have the same. So that's basically the difference in the behavior between the model hatch patterns and the drafting hatch patterns or fill patterns, and how they're going to behave in regards to the scale. So basically that's how all of these work. Now, one more thing to kind of keep in mind is that you can set up the transparency here, or you can make it masking or not masking. However, you can also control the transparency by right-clicking, so select the item, the hatch pattern or the fill pattern, select it, go to Override Graphics and View by Element, and then you're going to get this dialog, and here you can apply a transparency. So if I apply a transparency here, now when I overlay it, it's still going to show what's behind. It's just going to be, well, we have some transparency. So that's basically how this works, how these fill patterns work. And then if you have these fill patterns here, keep in mind they are detail items. So what that means is basically the first thing is something that we've covered in the beginning, basically meaning that you can only place them in plan views, elevations, sections, and so on, but not the 3D views or your sheets. However, for these patterns, they are also view-based. So that means that it's only here in my floor plan view. If I go to my, let's say, room diagram, it's not going to be there. So we just don't have this one. So it's only going to be view specific. Only in the view where you've created it, that's where it's going to appear. Now you can easily copy it from view to view just by selecting it. Go here to copy to clipboard, go to paste, align to selected views. So it's basically going to place it at the same place in a different view. So here I can say I want it in the room diagram. So it's going to do that. So if I come to the room diagram, it's here. So you cannot see it because I think we have a crop view here. So if I turn that off, now it's there. So basically it's in the same place as we had it here in this particular view. So if you want this to appear in multiple views, you just select it, copy to clipboard, and then paste to aligned views, and then you just specify one or more views where you want to place that. Okay, so that kind of covers our filled regions. So now let's talk about our masking regions. So here we have the masking region, and it's basically the filled region but set to white, and it's really straightforward. You just make it, place it, and it's done. It's masking everything. Now, also keep in mind that you can edit the boundary, and then you can make these invisible, or you can pick out any line style that you want to see. You can set that up there. And then you can also control the positioning. If you go send to back, now it's back behind this. If I go bring to front, now it's in front of everything. So there you go. That's basically the masking region. It's very simple, very straightforward. If you don't want to mess with anything, you just want to hide something, use a masking region. For everything else, you use a filled region. And there you go. If you want to get this project file, it's actually available on my Patreon page along with all of my other Revit project files. So I'm going to include that link in the description of this video and then also up in the cards above. Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to check out my website, balkanarchitect.com, for more Revit courses. There I have over 120 hours of content, and I'm adding more each week. Make sure to subscribe for more videos, and also I've added a video over there that might interest you as well.